Welcome back to SportsLine here on News Channel 5 Plus. Great to have you with us just 2 days before Thanksgiving. We're going to switch gears, talk a little soccer right now. The World Cup soccer tournament underway in Qatar. Team USA with a 1-1 draw with Wales yesterday. They play England on Friday. Also, as we said, a huge upset early this morning as Saudi Arabia upset Lionel Messi and Argentina. Here to help us break it all down is our buddy from the Tennessean. He covers Nashville SC and the great game of soccer, my buddy Drake Hills. Drake, happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for being on, man.
Yeah, what's up, guys? How you doing? Good evening. Happy Turkey Day in advance. What's happening?
Man, everything's good, man. It's great to talk to you. We haven't talked to you in a while. All right, let's get into it. Team USA with that 1-1 draw with Wales yesterday. Felt like one that got away, Drake. They were up 1-0, and then, of course, our guy from Nashville SC, Walker Zimmerman, committing the penalty in the penalty area with Gareth Bale. He gets the penalty kick, and the game ends in a 1-1 draw. I mean, better than the alternative, a loss, but, man, that just felt like one that got away for the U.S. men's team.
Yeah, it's tough. You know, I've actually been saying this, I guess amongst my friends and whatnot. It was quite a first half. If you've never watched the U.S. men's national team before, not a big soccer fan, maybe just getting into Nashville SC or American soccer, that was a game in that first half. That was the best intro, because you saw this U.S. men's national team go up against guys that you probably heard from your friends that play in the English Premier League. Those are more experienced, higher profile. And you saw the U.S. completely dominate physically, athletically superior. Pretty much all of their stars were shining, perfect starts for the captain, Tyler Adams, obviously the poster boy, some would call the face of the U.S. men's national team, and Christian Pulisic. Obviously, Tim Weah, who is the son of the Liberian president, George Weah. George also played himself with AC Milan in Paris. He is the only African soccer player or African descending soccer player to win basically the player of the year in the world. So you have a lot of these storylines and these players that for many are a coming out party. And then, of course, to your point, to see things flip on its head in the second half, pretty much every player that talked in the mix zone after the game said it was significantly disappointing to see that result. Because if you beat Wales in that game, there is, it would have to be an absolute catastrophe not to advance into the knockout stage as one of the final 16 nations. So it certainly flipped everything on its head, just, for the U.S. instead of for their opponent. So a tough match, but it's going to be even tougher when they go against England on Friday.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you about that in just a second. But what about the foul called on Zimmerman? In your mind, was that a legit call?
Yeah, that's a foul. That's a legit foul, and it's unfortunately it's a mistake from Walker, someone who hadn't really put a foot wrong. He had one mistake that his center back partner Tim Ream actually recovered for him and was able to put the ball out of play. It was actually early in the second half, so he really didn't have a bad game, which is tough, right? In any sport,
sure,
where you have someone that pretty much played their best or close to it, and only to have one mistake go wrong and cost you a win. And that's what happens at a World Cup. That's what happens at the highest stage. And it's unfortunate that Gareth Bale was actually handled pretty successfully by the U.S. in that first half and a decent portion of the second half, and was able to capitalize for Wales, who obviously are hungry themselves. They haven't been to a World Cup since 1958. And so it gives both teams a point, and it's going to be interesting to see who makes it, along with England, to the knockout stage.
Yeah, you mentioned it. It'll be the USA versus England on Black Friday. What do you see from that game? What stands out about that matchup?
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of stars, right? I mean, England is one of the, I guess, the few teams, you put France in that category, as well as teams that have already shown how good they are, and that the fact that they are favorites. And in fact, England is, I think, fourth in terms of World Cup favorites according to Typico Sportsbook. So they're expected to go deep into this tournament. They put 6 goals up against Iran. Obviously, Harry Kane we'll wait and see if the striker for England is going to be ready to go, if he's going to be 100%. He had an ankle injury after being tackled in the game against Iran. But, England has some firepower. They've got Marcus Rashford. They've got Bukayo Saka. They've got Jude Bellingham, Phil Foden, Jack Grealish. These guys are playing for Manchester City and Manchester United and all of these super clubs in Europe. So there's going to be a lot of attacking firepower that Walker Zimmerman, Tim Ream, and a lot of the American defense are going to have to go against. So I think ultimately it's going to be, England's offense against the Americans' defense. And I guess the point would be, how few many mistakes can the U.S. have to keep this game close.
Drake Hills from the Tennessean is our guest, covers soccer and, of course, Nashville SC here locally in Nashville. All right, excuse me. All right, how about this Saudi Arabia upset over Argentina? Some are calling it the biggest World Cup upset ever. Where does it rank? What does it mean for those of us that don't realize, what this upset means?
Yeah, it's pretty bad, right? I mean, it's pretty incredible when you think about Argentina. I talked about England being one of the favorites. Argentina was up there. In fact, I actually picked Argentina to win the World Cup.
Wow.
Believe it or not. So, look, this team, they got the experience. Obviously, Lionel Messi, this could be his last World Cup. One of the best players to ever play the game. Certainly, I think, in my opinion, the best player in the world still. And if he's not, he's top 3. But if I were to go against some of the biggest upsets, I could, go back to 2002 when South Korea beat Italy. Or you could probably, Senegal that same year beating France. So there's a couple of recent upsets, even Spain. And then this is actually something that people should know about. Spain lost to Switzerland in its first game in 2010. Guess what happened in 2010 in the final? Spain would go on to win that World Cup. So, you never know. You never know. But I wanted to say this to your last question. You take a look at the U.S. Yes, England's going to be a big game, but I want to add that U.S. has some firepower, too. Don't get me wrong. Tyler Adams plays in England. He plays in the English Premier League. So does Brendan Aronson. They both play for Leeds United. You've got Yunus Musa. You've got Semi Weah. These guys play in Europe as well. So I think the U.S. could be a sleeper. If England understates them, I think this could be a type of game where the U.S. has some athleticism they can go up against and say, hey, we can score a goal or two on a counterattack. So I would watch out for that as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a fascinating match on Friday. All right, here locally, Drake, a couple of notes about Nashville SC. They were one and done in the playoffs. How would you categorize this past season for SC? Obviously, they opened their beautiful new stadium, Geodis Park at the fairgrounds, an amazing place. But a lot of people, I think, see the result of the season as a bit of a disappointment because they couldn't advance in the playoffs. What say you?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I think it's a disappointment as far as what this team has been able to do, given the fact that they did add Shaq Moore. They added Jacob Shackelberg. Shaq Moore is with the U.S. right now at the World Cup. You also have Jacob Shackelberg, who's, he's only 22 years old, and he's already on the fringes of making Canada's World Cup roster this time around. So you can imagine where Jacob Shackelberg will be in 4 years in the 2026 World Cup when it comes to American soil. So, with the pieces that they added, the talent that they had, you have Hani Mukhtar, as you and I always talk about, MVP, right? And the Golden Boot, most goals in Major League Soccer this past year. I think it is a disappointment, but I also want to put an asterisk next to that because this is a team that got put into the Western Conference, over 36 or 37,000 miles traveled this year.
Wow.
That's ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
It's the challenge that they had, and of course, I won't understate the challenge of playing in a new stadium, what that means after you just played 8 games on the road. That's hard, not just physically, but also emotionally and mentally. When you play the same way on the road, which a lot of folks may not understand in soccer, you're keeping your numbers back. You're not really taking risks. You're not really, putting a lot of bodies forward to go attack. To be able to kind of cement that in your brain, right? To repeat that 8 games over, only to have to completely change the way you play at home. Not to mention, there's not really a home field advantage when you have one of the best stadiums in Major League Soccer. Everybody wants to go and play there.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I think certainly there was some disappointment if you take a look at the talent. It's the most talented team we've seen in Nashville SC's 3 years. But I think that there have been some asterisks. I think it'll be the ultimate decision on what this Nashville SC team is next year, where there aren't going to be any distractions around the stadium. The season is not going to be compact because the World Cup is coming. I think a lot of excuses are going to die off. So I think when you have a Hani Mukhtar who's won an MVP, you've got Shaq Moore, you've got Walker Zimmerman, you've got Jacob Schaffelberg, I expect this team to actually make a deep playoff run in 2023.
Well, you mentioned Hani Mukhtar winning the MVP. He wasn't shy when asked if he deserved it. He said, yes, I do deserve it. He won the Golden Boot. In your mind, was he a deserving MVP?
He absolutely was. I mean, by far. As a matter of fact, I think Hani won the MVP in the summertime. I've been critical of, obviously how Nashville SC as a team performed in the summer, having that six-game winless streak. But if you take a look at what Hani did throughout the year, I mean, this guy has had more goals and assists in the past 2 years than anyone in Major League Soccer. And so, and not to mention, he had more goals and assists combined this year than anyone in Major League Soccer. And so, if you take a look at what he's been able to do, not just scoring goals, but making his teammates better, creating for his teammates, undoubtedly MVP.
Well, Drake, it's great to catch up with you. Love talking soccer with you, either here or on my radio show with Greg Pogue on Nashville Sports Radio. You do a great job. I say it all the time. You're a rising star here in Nashville amongst the sports media ranks, and continued success to you. And I hope to get together with you at some point during this off season. But happy Thanksgiving to you and your family, my friend.
Absolutely. Sending the love right back to you. Thanks, John. I appreciate the time.
All right. There he goes, Drake Hills. Follow him on Twitter at LiveLifeDrake. Also on Instagram at Drake Hills Soccer. He's a great follow on either one of those platforms. All right. We're going to take a break. Come back. More Titans talk. We're going to hear from starting QB Ryan Tannehill. We all know what happened the last time he played against the Cincinnati Bengals, and it wasn't good. We'll hear from number 17 next here on SportsLine.